For example, one incident, when asked, "Why are you taking so long?" by a harbor worker, an infuriated old Jew snaps back, "Are you getting ready to throw me into the Dnipro?" Those who remain in the city show hostility to all evacuees, but particularly to Jews. While recording these attitudes, the author makes it clear that she herself, like the others, considered the privileged position of Jews has in fact generated much of this opprobrium. She notes the anger directed against those who have, as she says, feathered their nests, grown rich, and are the first to leave. Although earlier quotations that are mentioned were included in the novel, but this one now is not. This is what she says. "There is such a taboo placed on the word Jew that one cannot even dare to criticize them, especially in print. For some reason, the actions of a bad communist can be criticized sooner than those of a Jew. You're immediately accused of anti-Semitism for no reason. Now everyone is openly talking about them. However, psychologically there is pressure. One cannot write about this, that they are cowards and insolent, that they are not going to the front, that they have sullied wonderful ideas, grafted onto society and made bloom the idea of getting a good spot, weaseling one's way out, avoiding, working something out. One Jew explains why Hitler does not like them. It's because Hitler thinks that only the Jews can be the equal of Germans. This is that idea of superiority, of one's exceptional nature. This is chauvinism, but no one dares say so." Now, this quotation is the words of Humenna. This is not an overheard comment. Such passages are probably an accurate reflection of the mood among many who witnessed the privileged strata's frantic, often unseemly rush to catch boats, trains, and other transport moving east. In the diary, Humenna describes how she was herself forced to leave on a boat, travel down the Dnipro, but then she jumped ship and made her way back. For patriotic reasons, she wanted to be there, to witness, to bear witness to the events, to share the fate of her people, but also she wanted to get away from the Soviet system, from Stalin's regime. So her animosity towards the escaping literary elite, who live well while claiming to represent the common citizen, is presented as a widespread phenomenon that's felt across the board. Back in Kyiv, she notes in a passage not included in the novel that the vacated apartments of the affluent are now being taken by working people. Quote, "The Communist Party, with the help of the Jews, has lied itself into a corner, zabrechalася, and has no authority among the masses, has gone rotten. The people have rushed into a reaction." She also is motivated against personal anger against certain writers, Ilya Stebun, Ivan Savaholovanivsky, Ivan Lehr, who are all Jews, as well as Alexander Kornichuk, the head of the Writers' Union, who is a Ukrainian. And she's upset that it is often these writers who present the public face of Ukraine. They're Jewish. This does not sit well with her. What the reader lacks when reading these commentaries is the sort of perspective that was provided by Valery Grossman, in his famous lament over the death of ordinary people in his pamphlet Ukraine Without Jews, written in 1943, which was actually included in the Nuremberg trial. This is just a fragment from it. These are the people that were killed. Old men and women are dead, as well as craftsmen and professional people, tailors, shoemakers, tinsmiths, jewelers, house painters, ironmongers, bookbinders, workers, freight handlers, carpenters, stove makers, jokers, cabinet makers, water carriers, millers, bakers, cooks, and he goes on and on and on. It was a community that should not be stereotyped, is what he's saying. However, Humenna astutely observes very early in the account how this anti-Semitism, inspired by a sense of social inequality and linked to rural resentment of the city's rich, quickly becomes entangled with low impulses, personal greed, the coveting of property and apartments, and the lust for violence. As the writer witnesses this moral degeneration, her attitude begins to change. When the Germans enter the city, she observes their brutality towards Jews. And at this point, her views undergo a very fundamental reassessment. The propaganda posters caricaturing Jews disgust her and her friends. She is equally appalled by the nationalist newspapers, in particular the Nove Ukrainske Slovo, New Ukrainian Word, which describes all non-Aryans, including Ukrainians, as defective. This is a quote from her. The newspaper and Stepa's editorials are aimed at instilling a lack of faith in ourselves, our own powers, a lack of will, and a slavish submissiveness, in full belief that our older brother, used to be Russians, now it's Germans, will provide everything good. The Germanic peoples have been quickly promoted to this older brother status. Without them, it seems, through all of history, we would not have made a single step forward. This is part of the colonial mentality that Ukrainians need to get over. And she also becomes impatient with these strange ideas that democracy is a product of Judaism. So this is how she responds. They argue that there is no freedom, that the democratic idea is false, that it deceives people, and the entire liberal democratic movement is pernicious, a weapon in the hands of Judaism's rule, that Jews corrupt society when they bring on a revolution so they can themselves rule. She dismisses these, arguing that there are systems of governing far worse than democracy. These include aristocracy, monarchy, dictatorship, or blind obedience. Initially, therefore, the writer's anger towards Jews is based on their association with the Soviet ruling class. But then it substantially softens when confronted with the behavior of German troops, nationalist émigrés, and above all, the shock of the Holocaust. This reassessment is even more evident in the novel, as we'll see in a moment. The most important change is the introduction of a narrative of Jewish suffering and loss in the novel. It's present in the diary too, of course, which records the Babin Yar massacre of the 29th to the 30th of September 1941. But the novel introduces several characters, including Rosa, who is the Jewish friend of the main protagonist Mariana, and whom Mariana tries to protect. These changes indicate an attempt to grapple with the issue of anti-Semitism and complicity in the killing. So, Nazi attitudes and those nationalists who share them are discredited. Humenna asserts democratic values and solidarity between peoples. The writer bears witness to this destruction of the city's Jews and attempts to give an honest account of what she sees and hears. So in the diary, for example, she already describes old, sick Jews being left to die on the street. She records her revulsion at the casual comments people make, such as, "It has become easier to breathe without Jews." And it attempts to rationalize the taking of clothes from Holocaust victims. The following is an overheard conversation. "Jews on one side, possessions on the other. The Germans took the best stuff and passed on the worst, saying, 'Take it, Rus.' But really, when you think about it, does it belong to the Jews? It belongs to all people, because the people worked for it all. What was stolen has now been returned." This is spoken by Zina, who herself was kept in high style by a Jew called Kopelev, who provided her with the finest clothing, much of which he came by during the liberation of Western Ukraine, so-called, 1939 to 41, at the time of the Hitler-Stalin Pact. But the above conversation is retained in the novel and displaced. It is used to expose increasingly anti-Semitic views of one character called Humenna, who continually adapts to whoever is in power. She holds that the Jews have brought persecution on themselves by conducting subversive work and setting fire to buildings. She's a typical conformist who claims at various points to be Russian, Ukrainian, German, a Volksdeutscher, depending on what is convenient, and adjusts her opinions accordingly.